Do you found a skeleton? How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey everybody, welcome to Jackson with Jackson number 29. Yes, 29, of course, I know this. Hard at work in the quote mine. Talking about Charles Jackson. I am, of course, here with Jackson Wheat. Jackson, it feels like it's been, 20-something hours since we spoke? It's been a while.
It has been too long, Dapper. Far too long.
Far too long. Alright, so before we actually get started, I have a few things to read. Well, first of all, I want to say that, yeah, Dapper's a professional, because I somehow, the intro video got offset a little bit. I don't know how that happened, but I'll take a drink for it. I'm currently drinking spiced rum and spiced Coke in an effort to live longer and see the future. So far, nothing bad has happened, but I haven't seen the future, and my eyes are the same color.
Or Lisa Al Gaib.
Yeah, well, either. I mean, really.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, I also want to say that some deplorable kind of person named Dapper Dinosaur gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. They went to Hollyhock, Cindy Bidwell Glaze, The Fallen, Crypto457, and Grungavaldi Gurnison. So we'll take a few drinks for that, because both me screwing up the production as well as gifted memberships are drink triggers. So here we go. 1, 2. Hold on. Jillian Vector of Progress Ren says, but can Dapper Dinosaur fold space? Can, yes. Successfully? No. 3, 4, and 5. Remember, it's not the folding space that's the hard part. It's the knowing where to go once you've done that that's the hard part. Alright. So, Jackson, before we start, I'd like to invite everyone to bow your heads, and we're going to open with a word of prayer. Are you ready, Jackson?
I'm ready.
Okay. Our Darwin, who art in the British Museum, hallowed be thy name. Thy evolution come, thy selection be done, on land as it is in water. Give us this day our daily sexual selection, as we sexually select, and lead us not into inbreeding, but deliver us from extinction. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Well, now that we've appropriately opened up with a prayer to our Lord and Savior, Charles Darwin, because that's how apparently this works, I'm informed by young Earth creationists. I also want to mention something else that's happened recently. But also, Jake Nelson just gave a $10 super chat. Said Dapper and Jackson, masters of the Canadian takedown debate hub. That was a fun time. So, in case you didn't notice, I was on Chesh's channel with Jackson Wheat, as well as a creationist named Daniel, something that starts with an M.
Daniel.
And we had a talk about creationism, and I had a fun time, although I don't think it was the most productive talk that we ever had with a creationist, but that's okay.
Yeah.
It is currently available on this channel as an early access video, and it will eventually premiere on this channel as a mirror. And also fits of Zircon forms when the granite cools rage. Just gifted 1 membership, and it went to missed it. I'll have to scroll up a little bit. Give me a second. It went to Carver, maybe. Well, congratulations. I'll take a drink for that. So, Jackson, you had a great reading of this. So, would you like to set up the stage for this quick thing we want to go over before we start? Like, who said this, what they said, all that stuff? Oh, and of course, Jake Nelson says for $10, that prayer was worth another 10. Thank you.
It was pretty great. It was. I need to have that on a framed on my wall, I think.
I can help you out with that. I could get you a nice version of it with fancy lettering and everything.
Yeah, it was very good. So, you guys and gals and in between may or may not be aware, but there's this organization called the Discovery Institute, and the Discovery Institute has had a really bad series of runs, especially around the early 2000s. and they have a second blog, which is kind of deceptively titled Evolution News, but it is just a branch of the Discovery Institute. And one of the main writers over there at Evolution News is a guy named Gunter Beckley, who is an actual invertebrate paleontologist. So he does have actual credentials. He actually publishes in literature. I did unfortunately come across some of his beetle papers when I was doing background work for my thesis. So yeah, he has like actual, creds and everything. He's not like.
I mean, my understanding is that his invertebrate, like insect systematics, is perfectly fine.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, it's yeah.
Savage premarital mitosis cobras for $5 says, for the offering plate, may thy lineage endure until the extinction of all life. Savage premarital mitosis cobra.
I think it was Erica brought to our attention that he wrote an article about her and Arn Ra.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of this article, just as like a little flourish, Dapper, myself, and several other people kind of all get mentioned.
Oh, just read that last paragraph. It's only like 2 sentences.
You want me to read? All right.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Remember, this is Gunter Beckley.
Yeah, so this is Gunter Beckley of the Discovery Institute. Okay, here we go. And I quote, unfortunately, poorly researched and highly biased content, mixing factoids with outright falsehoods, more motivated by a dogmatic worldview than by any interest in scientific truth, is symptomatic for the new generation of atheist and materialist, hardcore Darwinist YouTubers such as Arn Ra, Gutsit Gibbon, Jackson Wheat, Dapper Dinosaur, or Professor Dave, and their deplorable ilk.
That sounds like the kind of comment right there at the end that might lose you the 2016 presidential election. I don't know.
It's pretty silly. It's really funny because as Dapper and I were thinking about it, neither of us have ever done any videos specifically about Gunter Beckley.
Nope. I've done Stephen Meyer.
Yeah, you've done Stephen Meyer. I've done. Well, let's see. Now that I think about it, I don't think I've ever done. None of the videos I've watched on my channel, like on my Thursday streams, ever been about Gunter. We did watch the Joe Rogan Stephen Meyer stream, or at least part of it, and it was kind of lame. I did, however, I did co-write both of the Gunter Beckley scripts for Professor Dave and the Stephen Meyer script, but Gunter doesn't know that unless he's watching this, I guess.
Or he's just reading your Twitter feed.
Yeah, or he could potentially read my Twitter feed. It's very funny that the five of us got picked out
very specifically. I don't even know why he picked up on me. You know what it might be? I think my
also
Stephen
me.
Meyer
what
video,
did I do?
Well, I think my Stephen Meyer video actually turns up pretty high in their search results for Stephen Meyer.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's actually what it is. Because I know my Snelling one does. I went to an incognito window and went into YouTube just to see what does YouTube look like for a brand new user who doesn't have an account. That's basically what you get when you go there incognito and you don't sign in. And I searched for
I'm gonna try that.
Snelling and Meyer, and my videos were, I think they were either on the first or second page of results for those two people.
Gunter.
So.
Maybe Stephen Meyer. Let me try that. Actually, I'm curious now. I want to see what comes up.
Well, real quick,
no.
Joshua Geese has gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. They went to Off Journey, Cadence Linker, Robert Carpenter, The Fallen from Heaven, and Lady Moonweb. That was the last one, so that's fine. And all right, well, here's 5 more drink. Thank you very much, everybody. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I only have 3 cans of Coke left, guys, so if you want to, you could probably make me have to resort to just a glass full of rum. All right, so while Jackson is looking up that stuff, we're going to talk about the rules here because we got some drinking rules. This is a bit of a drinking stream. But first of all, before I go through the rules, I just want to say, if you want to play the drinking game but you don't want to use alcohol, that's perfectly fine.
Crenshaw.
If you want to, say, drink something else, water, juice, soda, coffee, tea, if you want to take a drag on a vape pen, just, fist pump the air, like whatever you want, right? It's fine. You do not have to play with an intoxicating substance. And if you do, it doesn't have to be alcohol. But that being said, if you do play with a intoxicating substance, please be careful, pace yourself, know your limits. Do not go out after doing this and operate heavy machinery, drive a car, text your ex. Jackson, myself, the channel, we accept neither liability nor responsibility for anything you do as a result of playing along. We've got a couple more things. Goopdo3 just gifted 1 Dapper Dinosaur membership, and it went to Grey Wolf Coder, so here's a drink for that. Thank you very much. And Jackson Nelson for $5, or sorry, Jake Nelson. Goodness, there's too many Jacksons around. Jake Nelson for $5 says, Paraglide and Dapper. There's exactly one too many Jacksons, and it's not Jackson Wheat, who's the extra one. So thank you very much. So let's take a look. We will take a drink whenever the creationist says something that's just so stupid we kind of have to, just to preserve our sanity. We will also take a drink anytime Bad Jackson actually gets something factually correct. We'll also take a drink if he tells a joke that doesn't land or a story that didn't happen. Now, that one's a bit of a judgment call, but, if it sounds like something that belongs in r/that happened, yeah, we take a drink for it. We'll also take a drink if he confuses anything from the single specimen of Lucy with what we could know about a wider taxon to which she belongs. So, for instance, if he's like, well, we don't know if Australopithecus afarensis walked upright because we didn't find Lucy's feet. Yeah, that's what we call an ad hominid. Now, that can only happen once per stream, because once it happens once, it usually happens in rapid-fire succession. So, It's also Trojan source. If Charles Jackson cites a source, and we go look up the source, and not only does the source fail to support his contention, but it actively contradicts his point, we take a drink for that as a Trojan source. We'll also take a drink if either Jackson or I can successfully predict where Charles Jackson is going to go where it's not very clear. We'll also take a drink if Charles Jackson mentions that, group of people who were in charge in Gunter Beckley's homeland back in, the 1930s and 40s. I think that... Oh, we'll also take a drink if anyone super chats anything to the effect that AIG are a bag of dicks, or sends in a membership milestone chat or super chat that has any of the kaiju emojis. That's Godzilla, Ghidorah, and Mothra. All 3 of those emojis for members. Take a drink for that. Also, if they come by audibly, we'll take a drink. As you've already seen, we'll take a drink for each gifted membership. Once we get to 50, though, where I'm just going to finish whatever I have in my cup and go get another one and add 50 to the counter. We will also take a drink if... No, I think that... Did I cover all of them? AIG, emojis?
Sounded like it.
Yeah, looks like everyone. Yeah, also if I screw up the production, which has already happened. So, that's great. Jackson. Good Jackson. Are you ready to hear from Chucky J?
I am. I was just looking. I was trying a couple different searches. I genuinely, I don't know how he could have come across me.
Maybe he's watching way more counter creationist YouTube than any of us think.
That's entirely possible, because technically, if you do look up the video Mathematical Challenges to Evolution, if you scroll down a ways, you will eventually come across one of my videos. But you have to scroll for equivalent to a few pages before coming to that one. So I was like, I don't know.
Well,
I don't know how he found me, but whatever.
I mean,
I'd love to talk to him. Gunter, if you're watching this stream, come on and talk to us. We'd love to have you.
I tell you what, Gunter, I won't even... I'm trying to remember. What is it that Gunter said when he was complaining about Dave?
He was mean? I don't know.
Okay, here it is. This is Gunter complaining about Dave. In the first 5 minutes of his new video, he being Dave calls ID proponents, quote, clowns, charlatans, frauds, and liars, and calls ID arguments, quote, pseudoscience, rubbish, horse manure, and dishonest tripe. I'll tell you what, Gunter, I promise not to call you a clown, a charlatan, a fraud, and I won't call you a liar unless I catch you in a lie. I will not promise not to call ID arguments pseudoscience, but I will not call them rubbish, or horse manure, or dishonest tripe. I might call them honest tripe, though. So, what do you say, buddy? That's me promising to be nicer to you than you were to me. I won't even call you deplorable, or your group of ID guys, you're a deplorable ilk. So, hey. And I think there's a fair chance you actually are watching this, Gunter, because, I mean, you mentioned me by name. You gotta be watching some of my stuff. Alright.
Yeah.
Let's hit play on Charles Jackson here.
All right.
We creationists look at the similarities and the differences in the DNA, and we think that those similarities and differences have existed all the way from the beginning.
Whew. Well, that's dumb, so let's take a drink and then we'll talk about that. So, there's this thing called coalescence time, right? And you can actually measure a coalescence time for any two genomes that actually share a common ancestor. And if you can't actually get reliable coalescence times for aspects of the genome, that's a good indication they don't share a common ancestor. So, here's the problem, though. Are there any parts of the genome that don't actually have a coalescence time that's calculable?
Are there?
No.
I don't think so.
The entirety of the genome has a coalescence time, which means that all organisms, any two organisms, will share a common ancestor in the form of a single haploid genome. That is the most recent common ancestor genome between those two organisms. Which means that we just don't really have an option for created heterozygosity that actually is uncoverable in the data. It's just not there. So, sorry. Guptu3 and his Guptu3 and his deplorable ilk. Nice. For $2 says, calling DI clowns is an insult to clowns. Yeah, what did clowns ever do? They certainly weren't spreading anti-vax propaganda. At least not as a whole.
Didn't they, try to take over the Earth or something?
Clowns?
From outer space?
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, the killer clowns from outer space did. But we're talking, human clowns that are just aesthetically similar to the killer clowns from outer space.
Well, I guess nothing then.
Which, by the way, I love that movie. It's so ridiculous and goofy. Oh, turning people into cotton candy so you can drink their juice through a straw that you put through the cotton candy. It makes no sense, but I don't even care. Yeah, there's the guy who there's the clown who knocks someone's head off by shadow boxing his head off. Come on, man. This is great.
The reason that some animals are more similar in their structure and DNA is because those body structures are coded by that DNA to do a similar job.
Except, and here's the thing, that argument doesn't work. You could potentially make that argument for functional regions, and even still, it's very weird that God decided to make everything in a nested hierarchy. But even assuming that, you still can't make that argument for non-coding regions of the genome, because they also form nested hierarchies. And so you have to make this really bizarre argument that, God just wants everything to be nested hierarchies, all the way down. Even regions that don't do anything.
Yeah, and here's another thing. It actually doesn't even work all that well if all you're doing is looking at morphology, right? Morphologically, I would put, say, owls and falcons as being closer to eagles than either are to, say, I don't know, kingfishers or parrots. But actually, owls are much more closely related to kingfishers than they are to eagles, and falcons are much more closely related to parrots than they are to eagles, too.
And swifts.
There you go. But it's, even in mammals it happens, right? The kinkajou is a procyanid, which is the same family as the raccoon. But if you looked at it and watched it climb through the trees with its prehensile tail in South America, if you weren't paying too much attention to its face, you might think that you just saw a monkey. It certainly has much more in common with a monkey in terms of just gross morphology, especially a New World monkey. It even has the prehensile tail. Much more in common with those monkeys than it seems to with a raccoon at first glance. But guess what? Run the DNA, you will find it's much more closely related to a raccoon than it is to any monkey. Much more closely related to your dog than it is to a monkey. Jake Nelson for $10 says, do you remember Killer Clowns from Outer Space? Pepperidge Farm, remember? I do remember. Like I said, I love that movie. That movie's a lot of fun. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh yeah, this is a work of art. It's a classic of horror. You're going to be amazed. No, it's a fun, goofy movie to eat some popcorn to. And then maybe also, hang out with your friends and watch it and have a few drinks. It's a great movie for that. Yeah. Amazing. Anyway, so, yeah. That's one of the things about this whole, like, oh, similar body plan, similar diet means similar DNA. Except when it doesn't, because convergent evolution is a thing. And the thing is that evolution can explain convergence. Creationism can't really. It breaks their models. Because if your model is similar ecology and similar body plan leads to similar DNA, that breaks down almost immediately. Why aren't all slugs more similar to each other than they are to other snails? Because, slug is actually a polyphyletic grouping, right? There's no such thing as true slugs, right? Slugs are just shellless snails, which is a condition that has arisen in snails many times independently. Which is why all slugs are more closely related to some snails than they are to some other slugs. So, yeah. It just doesn't work. Let's see. Heather, do hyenas count as dat or cog? Coon for $2 says, one word, Afrotherians. Oh my goodness, yeah. Why is the golden mole so genetically distinct from other quote-unquote moles, but it's more similar to an elephant?
Why are elephant shrews more closely related to elephants than shrews?
Yeah. Why is the hyrax more closely related to an elephant than it is to any other thing that it looks like a groundhog or something? Yeah. Why are dugongs and manatees more closely related to elephants than they are to the dolphins that they more closely resemble? I don't know. On the grounds of young Earth creationism that Charles Jackson is putting forth here, none of these things should be true, and yet they are.
However much different a horse's leg is from my forearm is to the extent of how different the function is. However similar the structure is, and the DNA that codes for it is accountable for however similar the function is.
Okay, but again, you don't have to. It doesn't
actually work that way.
It is a. It is like you can account for that under creationism, but that is not predicted by creationism. Right? So with what I was saying earlier with the functionality argument is, again, that's not even something that functional DNA would be similar between two species is not something that is predicted by creationism. It is something that can be accounted for by creationism or absorbed into the idea, but it's not predicted. If there were, in fact, separately created kinds, the best way, in my opinion, to show that all kinds are separate is to use completely different genetic material. Yeah. Right? If every single kind had its own genetic material that's completely different from every other kind, that would be a pretty easy and good and obvious way to show separate kinds, right?
Yeah. And I mean, here's another thing. I would predict on the basis of evolution that humans would actually have more in common in their genetics, including for their limb development, with horses than they would with, say, opossums, despite the fact that an opossum forelimb is much more similar to a human forelimb morphologically than it is to a horse forelimb. So, hey, creationists, if you're out there, identify which limbs are important for the development of the forelimb, and figure out whether or not humans are more similar to the horse or the opossum. It might be an interesting test. We're going to hit play, because we keep up this pace, we're going to be stuck on this video for the next 4 years.
And it's a little farther off. Horse's front leg is something like a human arm, but evolutionists will always point to that homology argument that we heard about a little bit earlier today.
Man, how crazy that evolution, or people teaching evolution, would appeal to things that are only explicable under evolution. Weird.
That is wild stuff.
Man. Next thing you know, you're going to have meteorologists looking and talking about barometric pressure. What idiots.
They also. Well, we see the differences as they've always been there. Evolutionists say, well, they
obviously haven't always been there, because we have pentadactyl horses in the fossil record, and even creationists are like, yeah, no, that's a horse.
That is true.
I'm taking a drink because, you don't even think they've always been there, my dude.
The only reason our DNA is different from monkeys, since we used to be the same thing with them, the only reason our DNA is different...
No. Humans are still the same thing with monkeys. Humans never stopped being monkeys. Charles Jackson is just as much a monkey as a baboon or a macaque or a capuchin monkey.
Different is from mutations. You see, they see all differences in all the DNA of all the different living things on Earth today, oak trees, mosquitoes and rattlesnakes and hawks and people. They see all the differences as having been caused by mutations.
I mean, that's just objectively true.
Yeah, true.
Like, they just are.
Take a drink. Yeah, you got it. You've successfully explained evolutionary biology in one aspect.
Like we talked about that with Daniel yesterday. Mm-hmm. Like, if you look at two genomes, the differences between them are going to be mutations, and that's it. That is all.
Yep.
And like Daniel just kind of denied this. He had no argument to support him. He just kind of said no, and that was it. But like that's all it is.
Yep.
There's literally nothing else.
So, and since mutations happen according to them at a certain rate, that's
What do you mean, according to them? Creationists are well known to try to estimate and measure mutation rates too. Why is he picking things that creationists generally agree with science on, and then saying, according to science, this thing I also happen to believe?
Dapper, he doesn't know the lore. He is not familiar with the lore.
He doesn't even know his own lore.
Correct.
Fair enough, I guess.
That's an assumption. They don't really know. But they'll say, well, mutations happen at a certain frequency. And since it takes time for mutations, then the more mutations there are, the more time must have passed.
I mean,
so you see,
yeah? That's, yes, okay.
If there's very few...
Wait, is that a drink? He's not paraphrasing, he's not quoting anyone.
Sure, I'll take it.
That is a correct thing he said just on his own.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Differences between the DNA of humans and chimps, then there must not have been very much time since the day when humans and chimps were the same thing. So
yeah, man, look, this isn't that hard to understand, right? If you have your DNA sequence, and your third cousin has his or her DNA sequence, you can look at them and compare them, and especially look at highly variable regions, sorry. And then given known mutation and replacement rates, you can estimate, without knowing your genealogies, that you're something like third cousins or second cousins once removed or something like that, right? You're going to be able to figure that out genetically. And you can estimate how many generations back your most recent common ancestor, or more likely ancestors, because it was probably, a pair of humans. You probably share a pair of a male-female human. But anyway, you can do that. And the evolution is just saying, well, what if we tried that with, not just two humans, but a human and a chimp, or a chimp and a gorilla, or a human and an orangutan, or an orangutan and a Simang. Oh, look, we actually get meaningful results with numbers that we can actually trace back to a time frame. Okay, cool. Oh, what's that? The fossil record tends to broadly back that up too? Gee, that's convenient.
An evolutionist, the more differences means the more mutation. The more mutation means the more time has taken place since we evolved out of rats. You see, our DNA...
Humans never evolved from rats. There are no rats anywhere in the ancestry of humans. Take a drink.
Is very, very different from rats and dogs compared to monkeys.
Well, actually, humans are much more similar to rats than they are to dogs. Like, much, much more similar. That's why rats are used as model organisms. Yeah. So, rodents are actually pretty closely related to primates overall. Rodents and lagomorphs, rodents and lagomorphs are themselves like sister groups. So lagomorphs are like rabbits, hares, pikas, things like that, right? And if you don't know what a rodent is, your problem isn't lack of knowledge about like evolution. Your problem is that you're probably like shaky on English in the first place, which is okay. But like, yeah, they're the things with the two big incisors on either jaw that never stop growing. Like, beavers and rats and, I don't know, capybaras.
And the cool thing about like our genetic similarities with mice is that like that came as kind of a shock that we share about 90% of our DNA with rodents. Like that's kind of a shock, right? I mean, because we look pretty different. Mm-hmm. Mice have a long tail, they're very small, they got these large ears and everything, and they're incisors, and their molar pattern's very different from ours. And it's like, well, there's not really a whole lot separating us. It's really just it's more a matter of which genes are turned on and at what time. Like, that's the bigger difference between us.
I mean, if you went just on the basis of morphology, traditionally, biologists tended to think that bats were more closely related to primates than rodents were. Which, the fact that they're not doesn't seem explicable under Charles Jackson's ideas. For $5, Jake Nelson says, a Leica stream keeps the Bilbo, whatever, hit like. And yes, I do agree. Do please hit like. Savage premarital mitosis cobra for $2 says, a Mensa member, everybody. Yes, that's true. He is indeed a Mensa member. Which, of course, as I've said, is basically a club for people who like to brag about being in the club. That's it. I mean, yeah, they have a magazine. I don't know.
Because it's been longer, you see, ago since we were the same thing as dogs were. Us and dogs did used to be the same thing according to evolution. Well, that's how they're doing this. That's how they're using mutation rates in the genome to time evolutionary events.
It's not mutation rates, it's substitution rates, and they're not the same thing. All right, so here's an example. Mice mice reproduce a lot faster than humans, right? But they have a similar mutation rate. So mutation rates are measured per replication event in the DNA, right? So every time a cell divides, how many mutations do you get for that division, right? Okay, cool. Now, what that means is that because mice reproduce so much more quickly than humans, right? Because, mice live, 1 or 2 years? And they can frequently have more than one litter during that time, and each litter is going to be quite a few mice on its own. That means that, your average female mouse in the span of just a couple years is going to have several times more offspring than any human is likely to have in their entire lifespan of decades. Okay, well, that's interesting. But here's another interesting thing. Mice and humans have basically the same long-term substitution rate, which is measured as fixations in the population under consideration per year. And it's usually going to be a very small fraction, right? It's going to be like, 1 times 10 to the negative 5th fixations per year or something, right? So it's going to take a long time to get even one fixation. But how could it be that they have about the same long-term substitution rate? Well, it's because mice with their gigantic population size have much more, natural selection is a much higher factor for them versus genetic drift. With humans having a lower population than mice, genetic drift is a bigger force for humans because the lower your population size is, the more important genetic drift is. So, because mice have such absurdly high populations, at least a lot of the time, they end up having about the same substitution rate because natural selection slows down the substitution rate. April Van Ryn, who's been a member for 12 months, says, "You mean rodents F like rabbits? Weird. Godzilla. We'll take a drink for Godzilla. They do F like rabbits. But remember, rabbits are not rodents." But yeah, that fecundity is something that lagomorphs and rodents tend to share. So yeah, the long-term substitution rate is the important thing here. Because mutations occur, but they tend not to fix. They tend to get weeded out. And there's a number of ways. First of all, many mutations only occur in your somatic cells. And when you're measuring mutations between, say, father and offspring or mother and offspring, you're generally not sampling either organism's gonads for gametes, right? That's not normally how DNA tests work. You're testing somatic cells. But somatic cells will have somatic mutations that did not enter the germline of either organism, which means they won't be passed down. Further, natural selection weeds some of these mutations out. Further, genetic drift weeds some of them out. A novel mutation has a very low chance of fixing unless it has a very high positive selection coefficient, simply as a result of just the math of randomness. because genetic drift is basically encompassing all of the random aspects of fixation. So all of these things drive the substitution rate to be lower, in many cases, orders of magnitude lower than the mutation rate. So Charles Jackson is making the same mistake that all of his colleagues make when they talk about this, including Nathaniel Jeanson, the Harvard-trained geneticist, who apparently, despite the fact that he is on the record saying that natural selection applies to humans, is also on the record saying that he thinks that the mutation rate is an acceptable replacement for the substitution rate, even though if humans are subject to natural selection, then those two things cannot be equal. It's mathematically impossible. If any variants are lessened in frequency as a result of natural selection in humans, then the mutation rate is going to be higher once you correct it for time than the substitution rate. So, yeah.
Based on a bunch of evolutionary assumptions, whether they're true or not.
So here's a fun thing. In science, when you assume something, it is virtually always because previous research has demonstrated that beyond any reason to doubt. Right? That's what an assumption in science usually is. Unless you get down to like the very basic assumptions of science, like that the universe operates according to consistent rules that do not change across time or space. Okay, cool. That's a base bedrock assumption of science. But other than that, when you're like, oh, hey, I'm going to assume that the molar mass of carbon is whatever, which actually I think isn't it a gram? Isn't that the definition of a mole? Is how many carbon atoms are in a gram of carbon?
It's been a long time since I've looked at it. I do not remember.
Well, someone
would hate to
someone in chat, let me know, because look, I'm not exactly great at chemistry, so I'll double check me. But yeah, like you don't need to go and rederive that. We'll pick something other than carbon. So if I'm like, okay, what's the molar mass of uranium? I'm just going to look it up. I'm not going to sit there and before I do my calculation in chemistry involving uranium, right? 12 grams. Okay, that makes sense. There you go. Yeah, I'm just going to look that up in a table, and I'm going to assume the molar mass of uranium or carbon or whatever, right? But that's not an assumption in the sense that, like, I just made it up to be convenient. That's an assumption in the sense that, like, someone else already did this science for me. I don't need to do it now. Melly, for $5, says, I'm curious, how do creationists account for the fact that medical research performed on mice can be applicable to humans, Godzilla? So for the most part, they don't. However, I have heard Sal Cordova, who's one of the only creationists I've ever heard even attempt to address this, say that God apparently intentionally made mice similar to humans so that humans could learn about themselves without needing to do unethical research on other humans. I find that to be extremely unpersuasive, especially since, in fact, humans learning about themselves did, in fact, end up using a whole lot of unethical research anyway, and it's right in many cases
and
research
still
that mice
does.
Yeah, it still does, and in many cases, it's actually still research that probably wouldn't be solved by just using mice anyway. Because while you can learn some things about humans through mice, they're not close enough that you can just ignore humans, study mice, and then just apply all of those findings to humans. It doesn't work that way.
But also, like, for one of the major things that's still, I would say, unethical in today's medical research is that, like, the family of Henrietta Lacks, as far as I am aware, has still not gotten paid for, like, Henrietta Lacks, her cells being donated to science and all this immense research coming from
donated, huh? Is that the word that we're going with now?
I mean, that's the polite word for it. They were, taken
harvested
and
without consent.
Harvested, yeah, and her family has never seen any, because she's long past now, but her family has never seen any kickbacks from that at all. Even though, probably millions of dollars at least of research and breakthroughs in medical research have come from that. So yeah, it seems a little unethical in my opinion. Could be wrong, but.
But then, other than Sal, I've never heard anyone in the Earth creationist community address this at all. So, I mean, hey, good on Sal for giving it a go. Like I said, I find it extremely unpersuasive for numerous reasons. But, hey, creationists, if you're out there, I know some of you are, because I know some of you watch this. come up with an idea as to why that works. I mean, it can't just be similarity of body plan or similarity of ecological niche or even similarity in diet. I mean, if you go by similarity in diet, humans should probably be the same as pigs, right? Because pigs and humans have extremely similar diets. whereas humans and mice don't actually have very similar diets. So yeah, I'd be curious. What are your explanations, creationists? Let me know. Put it in the comments if you're a creationist.
They're using it as a genetic clock. Now, so that's how they've done this. You see, some of the DNA in monkeys is real similar to us, and some of it is really not very similar.
Actually, it's all pretty darn similar. It's even at the most dissimilar, it's still much more similar between a human and any given monkey than it is going to be between like a human and even a rat, which is already pretty similar.
That's where they're thinking, well, how could that be? Shouldn't all the DNA in the monkeys be like a little similar and a little different? Not some of it way more different and some of it way not as different?
No, for a number of reasons. One is mutational hotspots are a thing, right? The mutation rate is not the same across the genome. Certain areas are more likely to have a mutation at all than others. Further, some areas are under selective constraint, right? So if you have a very important gene, right? Let's say, you know what's really important? Hemoglobin. It's a great protein, right?
That is pretty important.
Hemoglobin, now, to be fair, there are some 1,000+ variants in the hemoglobin protein within just Homo sapiens, which means that there's at least probably going to be several thousand alleles for it. But it can only vary so much, because once it starts to actually lose its affinity for carrying iron and attached oxygen, you just kind of die. Which means you can only build up so many changes in your hemoglobin gene. Which means it's going to be highly conserved. On the other hand, you have numerous copies of, say, the amylase gene. And if, like, oh no, my salivary amylase gene broke, now I am less effective at pre-digesting rice and bread with my saliva. Okay. I mean, unless you're in a place where you're likely to starve, which many humans are not anymore, who cares? You're going to be fine, right? You can accumulate plenty of mutations there. Or otherwise, like, say, the gulo pseudogene, right? Which was originally coded for a protein that assisted with vitamin C synthesis. And now all monkeys can't perform vitamin C synthesis. Well, over time, that gene is just going to accumulate, or pseudogene is just going to accumulate mutations in various lineages. And it's going to start to diverge. And it's going to diverge more than the actual important active genes in those organisms. So it's twofold. One is, yeah, there's just mutational hotspots and cold spots in the genome. And two, some areas in the genome are highly conserved as a result of selection. It's one of the reasons we can actually tell if those areas are functional is if they show signs of purifying selection. Because if they don't show signs of purifying selection, then what that means is no mutation in that area matters, which means that it's very hard to come up with a plausible explanation as to how that area is functional if the actual nucleotide sequence there could be literally anything. Jake Nelson, for $5, says, allegedly humans and pigs have a similar flavor as well. Where's the Chianti? Look, I cannot confirm or deny that is a similar thing. I can't tell you what I got up to as a Cenozoic Ceratosaurus back before I was adopted into a family and taught the ways of the human.
See, here's what could happen. Some of the genes got mix-mastered and got mixed together and shared 4 million years after the first split. So that DNA in the monkeys that looks way different from ours, that's the DNA from way back.
What? What? No.
Wait, hold on. Is he? So his model is that DNA that is more different has just stayed the same. Like that was ancestral DNA that just did not change.
It seems to be that he thinks that highly conserved regions are inherited from more recent ancestors than non-highly conserved regions, which is not how that works. You have to...
Okay.
Taking a drink. That's ridiculous.
Back when we first split apart. The DNA in monkeys that looks really similar to us, that's the DNA that came from when our ancestors were mating with monkeys and mixed the genes around again.
Hey, Jackson.
Wait, what?
Humans are still mating with monkeys. You know how I can tell? Because they're all monkeys. All of them.
What?
But also, yeah, no, there's... This more similar DNA is not the result of recent hybridization with non-human monkeys. Oh my goodness. Okay, so there's a couple ways in which this happens. One is, as I said, some regions of the genome are just more highly conserved as a result of being under heavier or lighter amounts of purifying selection. Some areas just mutate less. And there's also a thing called incomplete lineage sorting, right? So there are a few areas in the genome where humans are more closely related to gorillas than they are to chimpanzee in that one area. And that's because, as a result of just kind of random happenstance, the lineage that diverged into humans carried with it some variations that were shared by the common ancestor of human chimps and gorillas. And the chimpanzees didn't carry that ancestral version. They carried a mutated version along. And so you get occasional areas where the lineages are incompletely sorted. Well, hence, incomplete lineage sorting. Take all that together, and this isn't some kind of weird evidence of late hybridization between, like, humans and gorillas, like, 5 million years ago or something. No.
We shared the same DNA for a little while, and then monkeys and humans again went their own separate ways. And
nope. There is, as far as I can tell, no one has ever suggested or proposed any evidence for late hybridization between hominins and non-hominid monkeys after the split between the ancestors of Homo and the ancestors of man. I am unaware of anyone proposing such a thing. So, yeah.
we're the hybrid of that, basically sort of a bastardized genetic line.
This is all just completely made up nonsense. I have no idea where he's getting any of this.
There's none of the main creationist organizations propose this. None of them.
Yeah, this is
so
completely.
He's just making it up.
Yeah. This isn't even something I can dump at the door of, like, ICR or something, right? This is just a him thing. My Unfinished Journey for $5 says, that argument seems to have a very strong emotional appeal for Sal, which means 1, good luck changing his mind, and 2, puzzled WTF looks for all else. Yeah, look, I don't think I'm going to change Sal's mind on much. Yeah, it's become very clear to me that Sal, despite being a reasonably well-educated guy, is very emotionally motivated thing. That's why he seemed to think that getting upset with me and then making quote-unquote response videos without actually watching the videos to which he's allegedly responding seemed like a good idea, because he thought that based on his emotional reaction, he knew the things that I was going to say and could therefore respond to them, even though he failed utterly. I also think it explains some of his rather horrible behavior towards people like Rebecca from Bread of Life. And even to some extent, his previous poor behavior in places like Reddit, where he gained the nickname Slimy Sal. And for a while, I thought that Sal was reforming, getting better, becoming less combative, less slimy, and then kind of reverted back to his old ways, and it was really sad. So, oh well. Vandalian 1998 for $5 says, what he's saying sounds so much like what Mrs. Garrison said on South Park about evolution in that one episode. Oh yeah, the one where she and Richard Dawkins get together. Yeah. Honestly, I think Mrs. Garrison probably had a better understanding of evolution than okay, that might not be entirely fair. But yeah, it is similar.
I don't know, Dapper, if you've ever seen it, but like Richard Dawkins finding out about he was shown like the South Park episode.
Oh,
and his reaction is just kind of like bewildered, like, well, satire is satire, I guess. Okay.
I mean, look, as much as I'm not a big fan of Dawkins, I'm glad that he was just like, I guess it's satire. Okay.
But yeah, he's like so confused and bewildered. It's very funny.
Yeah, my guess is that he's not in the demographic that South Park is going for.
Best nice way to put it, I guess. Okay, so that explains what's going on with this and why they had to make this bodacious claim. Next. Look at what Dr. Jeffrey Schwartz says in...
I have no idea who that is. Okay. University of Pittsburgh anthropology professor. Do molecular clocks run at all? Biological theory 2000.
in Biological Theory magazine, it's a journal, just this year, in an article
Oh, well, hey, now we know that this was shot in 2007.
Da-da-da-da.
Yay!
called Do Molecular Clocks Run at All? He's commenting on this very thing I've been discussing with you. Look at what he says.
Okay, hold on. We have to actually look at what he said. So let's see. Let's type this in. Give me a second here, everybody. Jeffrey Schwartz. I see your Schwartz is as big as mine. Do molecular clocks run at all? See what we got here. Springer. A critique of molecular systematics. Oh, okay. So I'm going to be entering in my credit card information to pay the $39.95 US that it takes.
Of course,
definitely not going to sci-hub.se
because that's not a thing. That's not real.
It's not.
You just made that up.
Look, I'm putting it in the chat. This is where you don't go. Don't go there.
Correct.
Don't do it. So yeah, I'm currently entering in my credit card information. Okay. I don't know what's so funny. All right. So let's see. See where this is. Genetically modified. Interesting.
Wait, it has the full article on the Springer.
That is this not the same thing that I'm looking at? What?
Do molecular clocks run at all? A critique of molecular systematics.
Start reading the abstract.
Wait. Never mind. This is 2006. Jeffrey Schwartz. Yeah.
So, okay,
here, I'll put it in our Discord.
But Bad Jackson's saying it's 2007, and it's not. And
whatever.
I'm searching for this. That struck me. It doesn't come up at all. Is he lying to us?
Can I search?
Should be able to.
Okay. Well, let me try it differently then, because it's coming up as like a weird PDF inside the article. I'm not doing that. It's too much.
I mean,
let's try it differently. Yeah, struck does not come up in the. I'm just looking up the word struck. It's not coming up apparently.
Chuck, what are you doing to us?
Well, how about we look up that quote then?
Yeah, okay.
That struck me that this model of constant change was never challenged.
Jeffrey Schwartz. I'm starting to feel lied to.
Pittsburgh, University of Pittsburgh, Pitt professor contends biological underpinnings of Darwinian evolution not valid.
Where are you finding that?
I'll put it here in our chat, our Discord. I found that but it doesn't quote it as from that article. At least I don't think it does. Let's see. Professor of anthropology.
No, I found
his work to debunk a major tenet of Darwinian evolution.
I'm finding it in Science Daily. Hey, hey, Chuck. Did you give? Oh yeah, this says February 12th. Oh no, that says February 9th.
Yeah, February 9th.
What you have says February 9th?
That's what I was looking at in the article. The Pitt professor contends biological underpinnings of Darwinian evolution not valid. I see this quote in that.
Hey,
but I don't see it in the actual article.
Hey guys, I'm going to take a drink we're going to call this a Trojan source, but that's the closest thing. Here's the thing. That citation, not only does it actually not exist because there's nothing with that title that I can find on that date, but everything that contains this quotation doesn't have that title, and it isn't in his actual paper. So here's a drink for that. Hey, Charles Jackson, you know what it's called when you quote someone and then give a citation, but in fact, that's not where you got it?
What is it called?
That's called academic fraud.
Oh, no.
Yeah, Charles Jackson is now an official academic fraud.
That struck me that this model of constant change was never challenged. If our molecules were constantly changing, and he means our DNA molecules,
I mean, they demonstrably are. So, I don't know what Jeffrey Schwartz is talking about, because they literally are. We can watch it happen in both laboratory organisms and just in human populations right now.
it would threaten proper survival. A genetically modified organism is not the product of gradual molecular change, but a sudden display. You see, he's creating a new theory. Watch.
No, at most, he's proposing a new hypothesis. One that, as far as I can tell, has not been accepted by anyone else.
Sudden display of genetic mutation, which may have occurred myriad years prior. What Dr. Schwartz is suggesting...
I think he's just suggesting Saltationism for some reason in 2007 or 8 or 9.
Is he's a mutationist? He's like a Hugo de Vries forever.
Right? Like, no, macroevolution really is different, guys. Okay.
Jeffrey?
Is that mutations gather up in family lines and don't show. We're just carriers of them until all of a sudden in one generation all these traits come out.
That's not at all what he just said. That was clearly advocating for macromutationism. I'm taking a drink. Not only is Charles Jackson lying about where he got this quote, he can't even understand it in the first place.
Okay, so he apparently, this guy is like a creationist.
Oh my goodness, shocker.
I know, crazy, but
reminds me of the Muslim lantern telling me to my face, I'm not going to give you sources from creationists. And then he cites both the Institute for Creation Research and Answers in Genesis. Like, okay, I see.
Yeah, apparently, well, according to this, it says he made an appearance in the documentary film The Trouble with Atheism. He was also featured on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, opposite evolutionary biologist and noted TV personality Todd Disotell. So this guy's a creationist. Okay,
that makes sense.
Cool.
And also, he's clearly advocating for macromutations, not cryptic mutations that all of a sudden become non-cryptic for no reason. Like, it astounds me the degree to which Charles Jackson never has any clue what he's talking about. Like, and then he just confidently gets up in front of audiences. I would love to have that kind of confidence. And I mean, you might say, well, Dapper, you have confidence, right? You're getting up here in front of 100 people. You've been in front of much larger audiences. Just like last week, you were in front of like 400 people. Yeah, but here's the thing. I make damn sure I have a pretty good grasp on things, and I still get things wrong and get extremely embarrassed by it. If you couldn't pay me enough to just get up and give a confidently wrong speech about something for which I have no understanding or education. Like if you were like, Dapper, we need you to really give a great, insightful, informative lecture on the collected works of, Leo Tolstoy. I'd be like, man, I quit reading The Idiot like a third of the way through, and that's about all I got. You have the wrong person. You couldn't pay.
You read The Art of the Deal? Sorry.
Took me a second. No, I have not read The Art of the Deal. Which, by the way, I'm extremely confident was not written by the labeled author. Yeah. I'm very confident that was written by a ghostwriter. But to be fair, he wouldn't be the only president to have had all of his books written by a ghostwriter.
Sure.
Right. Kennedy comes to mind as a prominent example of someone who had lots of books written by, quote-unquote, by him that were absolutely not written by him. Goopdo3 and his deplorable ilk for $2 says, a powerful rat named Charles Entertainment Jackson. Oh, Chuck E. Cheese. Reminds me, I actually watched the Five Nights at Freddy movie, and I was like, it's fine.
It was all right, I appreciate it. I thought it was kind of funny,
Yeah, and I will say the animatronic characters looked just like I was hoping they would from the video games. So, good job there. All right, here we go.
In a sudden display. So, like a lizard could lay an egg and a bird could hatch out.
Yeah, that's Saltationism. First of all, I'm not sure that that's what this Jeffrey Schwartz is actually talking about necessarily. But yeah, that's Saltationism, which is not the same thing as cryptic mutations there, Charles.
That would explain why there's no missing links.
Jackson, are there transitional fossils?
I believe so.
Do you think maybe I could display some on screen?
To the tune of a song, perhaps?
Unfortunately, I actually don't have the song loaded in.
Tragic. But yes, I think you could do it.
Yeah, I do too, actually. I really do. And I think it would actually be trivially easy to find pictures of very convincing transitional fossils, because they're actually all over the place at all sorts of different strata, all across the geological column, in numerous lineages, including dinosaurs, pterosaurs, snakes, lizards, hominins, horses, deer, just mammal to reptile transition, dinosaur bird transitions. Yeah, just all over the place. So, the absence of transitional forms isn't exactly something that needs to be explained, because it doesn't exist, right? It's just like I don't need to explain the dark moon that flat earthers think that causes solar eclipses. For the same reason. That's just not a thing. The absence of transitional forms isn't a thing. Now, to be fair, there are lineages that are less well attested than others. So, okay, yeah. You might be able to say that there's a missing link in that one spot. But the idea that there just aren't transitional fossils is complete nonsense.
Now, back in the 1960s, an evolutionist named Richard B. Goldschmidt.
Speaking of Richard B. Goldschmidt, it's time for a quick break. Because we are at about the halfway point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to grab myself a fresh drink. And in the meantime, hopefully you guys can enjoy the musical stylings of Beethoven that are hopefully not offset and not muted. So we'll be back in just a bit. All right, we are back. I am back. Jackson is back. Say hello, Jackson.
I'm back.
Welcome. All right, guys, before we get right back into this, I want to give the quick little after break talk here. So, as I'm sure most of you know, this channel is almost entirely supported directly from the viewers. Things like views, ads, all of that is extremely volatile on YouTube. For instance, YouTube has just decided that despite having, in some cases, even better than average click-through rates on impressions, to just not show my video to people. Just don't. People don't need to see it. And it's being frustrating, but one of the things that has not been frustrating is that as a result of me getting almost all of this funding directly from fan support, that fact has not significantly hit me financially, and I appreciate that stability that you guys give me, because if I were dependent on YouTube entirely, I mean, I would probably be deep in the red right now. But I'm not, because of you. And if you're currently watching and you are interested in helping out, but you're currently not, we have a number of great ways that you can help out. First is Patreon. Patreon starts at only $1 a month. You can go all the way to $100 a month if you want. You can get a 15% discount if you go annual. There's also the channel memberships. That starts at $1.99 a month. It can go up to $20 a month if you're feeling very generous there. Both of them give you early access. I think I now have more than 6 months worth of early access material in the queue. It's right there. Stuff that I'm putting out. I put out 2 videos into early access today. Just today. I'm hoping to get at least one more this current week, but I can't promise that. So, if I don't, sorry. But yeah, it's either way. You get access to my Discord server that's just for supporters. If you join the memberships, you get access to the emojis, the cool little symbol next to your name goes green, all that cool stuff. But also, if a monthly or an annual pledge isn't really your style, there's also a lot of other options. There is the merch store. There is there's also my wish list, which is an Amazon wish list, which is linked in the description. So is the merch store. The merch store is also right below this video. There should be a merch shelf. By the way, if you did recently get me a drinking vessel, shall we say, from my wish list, it hasn't arrived, and I'm a little concerned. If you could send me tracking information so I can make sure that I don't forget it, and I know that it isn't lost in the mail or something, that would be appreciated, because I am a little worried that something might have happened to it in transit. But that being said, yeah, those are also options. And if financial support is just not in the cards for you, if you can't afford it, or you just don't want to, which is fine too, then like and share every video that you can. Comment on the videos. Don't mention the algorithm though, because they know that. And Rosana Transmissible Parasitic Dog Killer for $9.99 says, this stream is still sponsored by the craveable taste of Mountain Dew Baja Blast lovers. Baja Blast. What a great thing. So yeah, with that, I think we're ready for more Charles Jackson. Good Jackson, are you ready for more Charles Jackson?
Let's do eat.
Okay.
Suggested the very same theory, and he called it the hopeful monster mechanism. And of course,
It's literally saltation. Got it. Okay. Cool.
All right.
I'm just going to take a drink. Back in the early 2000s, I was actually the main editor on the Saltation page on Wikipedia.
Really?
Yeah. Huh. And that was that way for a few years. Since then, it's been greatly expanded. It's much better than what I wrote. But yeah, for a few years, I was the only one who'd written more than 2 sentences on that thing.
Right.
Evolutionists could not get a mechanism for this. They couldn't explain how this could possibly work or happen. Dr. Schwartz is trying to dig up old Dr. Goldschmidt's theory. And
old Dr. Goldschmidt's long refuted nonsense theory.
Yeah, Goldschmidt was in the 50s, wasn't he?
Was something like that. Might have been even earlier.
Yeah, 40s, 50s, somewhere around there. This was in the early days of the neo-Darwinian synthesis that this debate was happening, and the idea that he's trying to revive it after we have actual genetic research is wow.
Yeah,
okay.
It has the same energy as someone coming up and being you know what? I don't like Einstein. I'm bringing back the ether. It's okay, but you're not though, all right? You know that.
Phlogiston for the win.
Yeah, right. Phlogiston theory is making a comeback, everybody. Also, Jake Nelson just upgraded their membership to Seropsid. Thank you very much. That is a $10 level. So that is
Nice.
very generous, and I greatly appreciate that.
Now bring it to the rescue of evolution as it is dying today.
We don't.
Watch
No.
Dr. Schwartz.
Please don't.
We don't need that. That's okay. You don't have to. And you can just not. And to be fair, like, he didn't. Like, he has failed utterly in the intervening almost 20 years. Like, no one's taking Saltationism seriously. Sorry.
Like him, watch these people as they're trying to say something else is happening. Hybridization must be doing it.
Who is saying that?
I mean,
he came up with a name for Saltationism, but who's saying that hybridization is the driving force behind evolution?
like, it's part of the process in some lineages, but that is not a primary driving force of evolution.
It's fairly minor, even in those lineages.
Right. Okay.
Or a gathering up of mutations, not gradual change.
Wait, what? You mean like the fact that mutations accumulate?
No,
is that what he means?
He's misinterpreting Jeffrey Schwartz's idea of macromutations and Saltationism, and instead he thinks that what's happening is actually there's a buildup of completely neutral and cryptic mutations that once they reach a threshold, suddenly make a gigantic change to the phenotype all at once, all of a sudden. That's the idea that Charles Jackson is putting forth, which isn't even the idea that Charles Schwartz is putting forth. He's just hallucinating an alternate version of Saltationism that that Jeffrey Schwartz never argued for. It's completely bonkers. In fact, I'll just take a drink for it because it doesn't make any sense. He's just making things up. I don't get it. Like, not even Jeffrey Schwartz is arguing for it.
Not gradual slow change like Darwin said, but a sudden display. That kind of thing. And then hybridization happening. Those are the real...
Wait, Bitcoin says, but that is what is in the article, Vapor. Okay, so hold on. Have I just misread this? Because I'll be fair. I mean, I didn't sit and read every last bit of the article. I'm just going on based on what I read both in the article and what Charles Jackson is saying. Are you saying that Schwartz is actually arguing for these cryptic mutation buildups that just suddenly all of a sudden all become noticeable in the phenotype for some reason?
That's also wild.
It's even more wild ultimately than a macro mutation. Some who's been a member for 4 months since at the amniote level says, been enjoying reading through Serena recently. Any other speculative evolution content suggestions? AIG or a bag of elephants with 5 legs with the Godzilla? Yeah, actually. So, I don't know how active it is, but I'm a big fan of the Furavara speculative evolution project, which is on an alien world completely. Who is it? There's an artist that I follow on social media who has got this alien species called the Birin, and he's got a lot of cool speculative evolution stuff that goes on their homeworld. Yeah, it's let's see, what are some other ones? There's a few that are online that I watch. I'm having trouble coming up with the names of. I mean, you could watch my largely now defunct one. Okay. Look, here's the thing. The views fell off of an entire cliff, and the problem is that it took so much effort to make those videos, and when I watched the views go into like the hundreds, I was like, I can't keep doing it. I can't. Let's see. So JMCA does lifts member for 5 months, is at the amniote level, and says, and I'm okay. So I don't know if you guys know this, but I find it nearly impossible to read font on Arabic at the same like miniature level that I can read the Latin alphabet for. So I'm gonna try and read through عبارة عن اسم القطب AIG, which I'm going to go ahead and, even though I don't know all of those words, I'm going to say that it seems like AIG is a bag made of dicks. Let's say min al-qutban. I think is like 6 or bars or something. But yeah, I'll take a drink for it. And geez, man, Arabic text is so tiny when they put it in these. I always increase the size of Arabic text. I don't know why. I mean, I guess I know why. Like physically, it takes up the same height on the line. But yeah, Arabic needs to be taller. It's like in the first word, like there's the ain and the ba, and they just kind of merge together into a single blob for me. The only reason I can tell that there's a ba right there is because of the dot under the line. And ultimately, if you told me that that was like the little y letter, like yeah, I probably would believe. Oh, then maybe that is 2 dots. The only reason I don't think that is because I can see. So yeah, thank you very much though, JMC Adil. Also, roasting a transmissible parasitic dog killer for $4.99 says hybridization makes the tree of life more like a timey-wimey web of life. Where it happens, yeah, it can. Especially previously geologically isolated subspecies rejoin. Yeah, it absolutely can. The nice, neat branching is a great model, but it's an understanding. Like we all understand, everyone who's working in this or is well versed in evolutionary biology understands that it's a simplification, right? That horizontal gene transfer, hybridization events can make the neat little branching where every node has 2 branches that come away from it. It actually is more complicated than that in real life.
Mechanisms, not mutation and natural selection. Like Darwin said, you see, they're coming up with new ideas. Watch these people. Next.
Roasting the Keller, I just have to point out that being able to badly struggle through tiny Arabic text in no way makes me a linguist. It makes me someone who took Arabic in college. And also who may have sung in a about 50% Arabic bi-language choir in terms of what we sang. I did that too.
In this article in Newsweek magazine of just this year in March, the evolution revolution, the new science of brain and DNA, is rewriting the story of human origins. And
Cool.
Hey, Jackson, how many articles have you read where the headline or like the subtitle was rewriting the story of human evolution or human origins?
Like all of them.
It's like dozens a year. How often is that actually true?
0 times.
Never. And by the way, remind me, is Newsweek a peer-reviewed scientific journal, or is it a popular level magazine that sometimes has science reporting?
I believe it is the latter.
Okay. Are you sure that they don't have peer reviewers there?
Does the editor count as a peer reviewer?
No.
Okay, then no, I don't think so.
All right.
mentioned last night, if they've got to rewrite their story every time there's a new discovery of fact, that ought to tell you something about their story.
Oh, well, first of all, they don't. And second, what it tells you is that scientists are willing to, learn from new data and take them into account.
I mean, when he says it should tell you something about their story, that's not technically wrong. It should tell you something about the story being written by Newsweek and not the story coming from the scientists. For instance, like, what was it, Geographic or whatever, several years ago, and a bunch of popular articles came out that were like, humans actually originated in Europe. And it's like, no, they didn't. This is like a stem African ape that is in Europe with other stem African apes.
Yeah.
That we already knew about.
Mm-hmm.
So,
by the way, if why is science is on the bingo cards, this definitely counts as a indication of why is science.
Yeah.
Well, let's look at another aspect of what we looked at last night. Again, in this...
we don't know what he looked at last night because I didn't find that video and we didn't go over it already.
And with that mustache, we probably don't want to know.
Look, he's just growing that mustache for his evening job in a certain film industry. One that his church probably wouldn't approve.
Admission by evolutionists in the major literature here. I'm going to zoom in on this part right here.
In the
again, like we did last night, but I want to...
Right. Because this is clearly still Newsweek. Look at the formatting.
Emphasize the DNA clock thing next. And it's going to be this part here.
Oh my God.
All right, there, the last creature ancestral to humans as well as chimps are close.
I I don't know how I feel about the fact that clearly he just took a photograph of his own hard copy of this magazine that he himself filled in with underline with a blue ballpoint pen. Like, and he couldn't find like an online version. Like, this was 2007. You could find this online.
He also underlined climate change way down at the bottom.
Oh my goodness.
Never a moment's rest.
I hate it so much. I really do. Goodness.
This living cousins live standing at a fork in the family tree as momentous as it is contentious. Fossils never resolved when the lineage is split. Fossils never showed when we split from the apes.
I mean, okay, well, first of all, we've known the approximate time since like the 90s, and originally, or even earlier than that, I think, originally the work that indicated humans and chimps split somewhere between like 8 and 10 million years ago was like immunological research. Basically, you figure out like how strongly other species react against some like certain protein, and then you can figure out who's most closely related to who, and then you can use the fossils that we do have to figure out an approximate phylogeny, or to figure out like phylogeny and also the approximate date of when these organisms would have lived. And then later, molecular methods came along, and we could do this directly with nucleotides rather than like kind of analogs in with immunology. But like the immunological stuff pointed to our common ancestor with chimps at like 8 to 10 million years ago, somewhere in there, and it got kind of pushed forward. So like it really wasn't that far off originally, but it wasn't based on just fossil data.
Yeah.
And also we do have fossils now that are around like 6 million years old that are pretty close to what we would expect for that split. So
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, there we go.
They finally admit it. There's no missing links.
I'm sorry.
There are no missing links. Okay.
You read from we can't resolve on the basis of fossils alone the exact divergence time between extant lineages. You took that statement, and then you took from that, therefore there are no intermediate fossils. I'm just going to take a drink for that absolutely insane train of thought. Those things are not equivalent statements in the least.
I don't think it's
Fossil.
a train. I think it's like an off-the-rails minecart.
There you go. He's just riding the minecart down the hill and is bumping and hitting rocks and tossing them around.
Never showed when we evolved from the monkeys. But DNA might! Okay, so now...
I mean, they both do, kind of. I mean, okay, so one thing is, it is broadly true that just on the basis of fossils alone, you can't tell when two lineages diverged, because their earliest fossils are likely to be virtually identical, but that does not mean that they have not already diverged, right? Like, we have our earliest tapir, our earliest horse, and our earliest rhino, and if you look at those three skeletons, they're practically identical. And if we were to find earlier examples of, say, those three groups of parasaudactyls, we probably couldn't tell whether or not they had actually diverged, because they would be so intermediate that we couldn't assign them to one of those three lineages. We could just say that they're stem parasaudactyls or something like that, right? But we couldn't tell whether or not they had necessarily diverged, because the actual isolation, the genetic isolation, which is what divergence time is, right? It's when you're genetically isolated, not when you speciate. Speciation comes after divergence, which means that when divergence actually happens, the fossils are going to be more or less identical. That's why you cannot get divergence times directly from fossils. You can only get estimates. And even if you found post-divergence fossils, because that might still be before speciation, you still might not be able to differentiate them. Now, an easy way to think about it is like, okay, let's say in the far future that humans colonize some other planet, right? We'll just say Mars. And then they actually manage to speciate. Well, guess what? The minute that those humans get to Mars and set up their own society there, that's probably going to be the divergence time. But they won't have speciated yet. They won't be significantly genetically or morphologically different, except in like, phenotypically plastic ways from humans on Earth. And if you were to look at just their bones, you probably wouldn't be able to tell if the divergence had happened, especially in the first couple generations. Okay, great. That means that, yeah, of course you can't directly get exact divergence times from fossils, because they don't have that information. So yes, you do in fact need genes, or at least protein comparisons, or like Good Jackson was saying, immunological studies, to get an estimate. This is not terribly controversial, and if you think about what divergence and speciation and morphological change actually mean, it's pretty obvious that, yeah, you cannot directly witness divergence in a fossil.
Now they've got a new hero, the DNA studies, all based on the assumptions I just explained to you. Human DNA and chimp DNA differ by no more than 1.2%, which I told you is logical even if evolution isn't real.
No, it's actually not logical. Like, here's the thing, right? If his explanation of similar body type and similar lifestyle were actually true, then gorillas and chimpanzees should fall out as more closely related to each other than either is to humans. But that's not what happens. Humans and chimpanzees are much more closely related to each other than either is to a gorilla. So, sorry, but your model has been falsified before it was even proposed there, Chuck.
Which it isn't. And DNA changes at a fairly regular rate. There's the assumption. DNA changes at a
Man, those transition effects. Is this being done with like a 1990s VHS editor? What is happening right now?
fairly regular rate. Nobody knows that. Nobody knows. And it also causes some problems.
You guys agree to that, Charles?
What was that? Sorry?
Your guys agree with that, though.
Right. Yeah, that's... Oh. I feel like nowadays, because, this is from a while ago, but I feel like nowadays, and in the 2020s, Charles Jackson is a bit more well-versed in what other creationists think. And he's less likely to go into these ridiculously weird tangents where not even other young Earthers would agree.
We would hope.
Yeah.
We certainly hope.
Also, here's a weird thing. You know that Charles Jackson is basically allergic to high-definition images being taken of him?
He wants everything taken on potato.
Basically, yeah. Even his most recent stuff, like I looked at it, like his Facebook profile picture was still taken with what looks like a camera phone from like 2007. Like, it's ridiculous. The only high-definition images I can find of him are from that trailer to that creationist sci-fi that I think has died in production, and like his appearance on that creationist movie called One About the Ark.
Was that Paradise Lost?
Yeah, Genesis Paradise Lost. Yeah. Those are the only places I can find like high definition images of him. In fact, the thumbnail image for this is taken from Genesis Paradise Lost. And even then, even though it's relatively high definition, the lighting quality is crap because the black levels are just they basically aren't black levels, right? Everything is washed out for some reason. I had to manually change the levels to add in enough contrast to make it look even halfway decent. It's like the man just has... maybe he's like a vampire or something, right? Like, you can't quite catch him on film properly. Or maybe he's like Bigfoot, right? He's just an inherently blurry fella.
You have to, like... You can get him more on camera with, like, the older the technology is. They have to use, like, the oldest cameras they can find.
Yeah, soon we're going to be getting one of the, like, hand crank film cameras for him.
But we'll see him perfectly. So.
Little Pink Bowser says, where can I get the bingo cards, by the way? So, generally speaking, I am not in charge of the bingo, and we have a few people who have the link in chat, and they usually put them in fairly early on. But hey, guys, if you have the bingo link, please do put it in there for Little Pink Bowser. Savage, premarital mitosis scoper for $5 says, Charles Jackson is immune to high definition, therefore Charles Jackson is Sasquatch. Yeah, exactly.
Haldane's dilemma. They estimated it would take 1,667. They figured mutations to change chimps into humans. Now,
hey, Jackson, does Haldane's dilemma apply to sexually reproducing diploid organisms?
I don't think it does, Dapper.
Okay, so is anything that he's saying relevant to anything at all right now?
I cannot confirm. Okay. I do not think so.
I'm going to take a drink because, yeah, Haldane's dilemma doesn't apply to humans or chimpanzees or just animals broadly, except maybe some parthenogenic species like whiptail lizards or the marbled crayfish or something. So here's a drink. By the way, we have a lot of whiptails out here, and they're all parthenogenic.
Nice.
No male whiptails. Although the reports of them mounting each other in order to stimulate ovulation are apparently much exaggerated. Seems like there's actually not really any evidence that they do that. So
sad. I actually met a researcher who, like, those lizards were a major part of his research, and I asked him about that, and he was like, "No," and I was like, "Okay,
oh, there you go.
Fair enough."
So if you were a fan of the lesbian lizards, sorry, they're not much of a thing. They're ace lizards instead.
They figured that out in the 1930s, and J.S. Haldane came up with this and said, well, guys, that would be...
Okay, but he didn't come up with this as some kind of thing that's like, oh, I guess evolution is wrong. He came up with this thing that says, hey, I think some of our models are inadequate. Because if we look at the model and we take this example, it doesn't match reality. And then you know what people did? They came up with new models that match reality better. Because that's what science is, right? That's the whole point of Haldane's dilemma. He was like, hey guys, we seem to be wrong about something. Let's fix that. And then they did. Haldane's dilemma is not a current problem that's active in biology. Evolutionary biologists figured it out.
We haven't had enough time for 1,667 mutations to occur. Now we found out there's way more difference. There's millions of differences between our DNA and chimps. That lets, if DNA changes at a fairly regular rate, that lets scientists use this rate to calibrate a molecular clock. If it was true, yeah, it would. Whose tick-tocks measure how long ago a genetic change occurred. If it was true. But watch, next.
Oh, we're going to a different article. That's interesting.
Dr. Milford Walpuff at University of Michigan, Ann Arbor said in 2004 in Science News magazine, those who use mitochondrial DNA to reconstruct animals' evolutionary histories assume that its chemical sequence changes only at random.
Wait a second. Hold on. Do they not realize that, like, the reason that certain sequences are picked is you want to pick ones that change as the background rate and not that are under selection, because that's going to either make it a lot faster or slower? Does he not realize that?
I'm not sure if he realizes that or not. Milford Walpoff, I would hope, would recognize that.
I don't even know who this person is. I hope it's not another creation.
You should check while we go through this.
Okay.
Milford, not Milford.
Another anthropologist. Professional work.
I'm going to hit play while you work on that.
Mounting evidence indicates that natural selection molds the makeup of mitochondrial DNA, making such analyses what? Useless.
Yeah, except, Chuck, man, we can tell which parts of DNA under purifying selection and which one aren't, because the parts that aren't under purifying selection have a higher rate of mutation accumulation.
Oh,
right?
He's also a crank.
Oh,
okay.
Of course. We'll take
he's a multi-regionalist.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so in case you guys don't know that, that's the idea that humans don't actually have a single human common ancestor, and that they all arose from various non-human hominins in different places. So, like, Chinese people don't actually share a human common ancestor with, like, Native Australian people or Native American people or European people or African people. So, like, yeah, like the Chinese people evolved from, like, Chinese Homo erectus, and Europeans maybe evolved from, like, Neanderthals, and then, like, Africans evolved from, like, Homo erectus or something. And in fact, in some cases, it gets even crazier. Some multi-regionalists have proposed things like, well, maybe the Chinese actually evolved from gibbons, and maybe the Native Americans evolved from New World monkeys, and maybe people in Southeast Asia evolved from orangutans. It's like, geez, man, no. So, yeah, multi-regionalists being like, oh, maybe mitochondrial clocks can't work because if they did, then it would completely debunk my idea of multi-regionalism. Yeah, I'm not going to take that too seriously.
Big yikes.
Yeah, I mean, not even Charles Jackson would agree with multi-regionalism, right? Charles Jackson believes that all humans have human common ancestors in the form of Adam and Eve, and also, I suppose, Noah and his kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jeez. And yeah, Love to Music says, oh yay, racism. Yeah, basically. I suppose it's hypothetically possible to not be a racist and be a multi-regionalist, but I've never seen it happen. There's a very, very high correspondence between being a multi-regionalist and being a racist.
That Venn diagram is almost one circle.
Well, I mean, there's a whole lot of racists who aren't multi-regionalists, but the reverse is not that true. I've never met a I think it might actually just be that multi-regionalist is a smaller circle inside racists.
That's fair.
Yeah. Because turns out there's lots of people who are racist for all sorts of dumb reasons, and multi-regionalism doesn't have to be one of them. We're going to be fair to the racists and say that their motives are diverse.
Do we?
Well,
okay.
I mean, we don't have to be fair to them in the sense of, like, offering them an equal opportunity to speak on platforms that we
That's
control.
true.
But we shouldn't blatantly lie about them.
Useless. Watch the scientific community with me. You know, what Dr. Schwartz is saying, what Dr. Wolpoff is.
So instead of watch the scientific community, watch the weird racist fringe figures that have essentially no influence on the wider field. Watch those guys. Which, you know, would also include young Earth creationists. They're just different pseudoscientists.
How did he find these people? Like, I've never even heard of either of these dudes.
Oh, I'm sure he was looking for people who were dissenting with mainstream science on the basis of their also crazy ideas like Saltationism or multi-regionalism.
Yeah,
so he was just searching around for anyone saying anything bad about real science. And he happened to find a few people who accept evolution in the broad sense, common descent, which makes them evolutionists according to him, but who, you know, are crazy cranks. Which means that they're likely to say dumb things that he could cherry pick.
Saying what these new discoveries are coming up with, what the literature is saying, what the popular media is reporting to what's happening in the scientific world.
The popular media aren't really reporting on multi-regionalism anymore because your average popular media doesn't actually want to be super associated with blatant racism. Now, not because, you know, big corporations are really care at all about racism. If racism was going to make them more money, they would absolutely go be racist.
Corporations.
But these corporations know that being blatantly racist is actually going to lose them money because it's not popular, so they don't do it. I'm not saying this to be, like, nice to corporations, but the instant racism becomes a money-losing proposition, they will abandon racism. And, hey, good job, society. Racism is generally unpopular enough that it loses corporations who blatantly engage in it money, so they don't. Also, Eris has just gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. Thank you so much. They went to Fight Mage Studio, Donald Jaramillo, Tyler West, Liz D, and Steve Austin. Wait, Steve Austin? The wrestler? The $6 million man? The crazy creationist geologist? Which Steve Austin are you? Or are you some kind of secret 4th Steve Austin? I'll take some drinks, though. Here come 5 drinks. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay.
New paradigm, like the New York Times said in June, is coming in evolution. They might not even call it evolution, but it certainly won't be Darwin's theory.
It hasn't been Darwin's theory for over 100 years, my guy. Oh, wait, that sounded sinful. Hold on, I have to say another R. Darwin. Okay, hold on. I'm sorry, Darwin. I'll do it. R. Darwin, who art in the British Museum, hallowed be thy name. Thy evolution come, thy selection be done on land as it is in water. Give us this day our daily sexual selection as we sexually select, and lead us not into inbreeding, but deliver us from extinction. Amen. Okay, now that I've purged my soul of the sin of saying anything against Darwin, I can't do it with a straight face the whole time. I'm sorry. You know, it's the same reason that when I have the Mecha Dapper avatar, that I have a statue of Charles Darwin in some kind of, like, ancient temple-looking setup.
Oh,
it's
okay.
literally just because of how ridiculous the idea that this is some kind of religion and people are worshipping Darwin is. It's like, oh, come on.
Darwin's not feeling very well. You see, next.
Yeah, Darwin was a guy who was writing in the middle of the 19th century. We're in, like, you know, Q1 21st century. We've moved on a little bit.
In 1998, National Geographic reported on the
Remind me again. National Geographic, peer-reviewed scientific journal or popular level science communication outlet?
I'm going to go with popular level communication outlet.
Okay, and do they have a history of, say, publishing things that haven't been peer-reviewed and turn out to be very, very badly wrong, say maybe recently in the field of paleontology?
That sounds like something they would do.
It does sound like something they would do.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now that we know who we're quoting here, Crixie at Dapper Dinosaur is a linguist, Purple, says I still think Dapper is a linguist. I don't know what definition of linguist you guys are using, because if it's just someone who knows stuff about language, then I guess technically that's true, but I don't think that's the normal definition of linguist. That being said, I can just bring out terms like split ergativity and non-concatenative morphology and start talking about them, so I can see why you would think I'm a linguist.
Australopithecus africanus, that one that was after the Lucy fossil by 1 million years and yet was more chimpy than Lucy. And
no.
Here's the thing. Australopithecus africanus had a different suite of primitive versus derived characters than Australopithecus afarensis. So there were ways in which it was more basal. And therefore, in the same ways that chimpanzees are basal, I guess you could say it was quote-unquote chimpy in those aspects. But there were other aspects in which it was more derived. Because these early hominins, in fact, all hominins, are a mosaic of basal and derived features. The fact that two species of Australopithecus were basal and derived in different aspects of their anatomy is it makes neither of them more like a chimp, nor is it surprising, nor is it a problem for evolution. Got a couple super chats. Jake Nelson for $10 says, Dapper, you owe 5 Our Darwins and 7 Hail Sagans. All right, I'll say them in private because, as our great prophet Neil deGrasse Tyson said, do your prayers in private, not public, for everyone to see. I think he said something like that. I might also be conflating it with Jesus. No, it's actually Jesus who said something like that in
Okay, because I was like, that would surprise me, but
yeah,
okay.
No, I'm actually paraphrasing Jesus. I mean, to be fair, I'm also paraphrasing Jesus when I come up with the R. Darwin.
Yeah.
Or at least I'm paraphrasing Jesus as reported in the Gospels. Whether or not Jesus actually offered up that prayer, I don't have a way to assess that reliably. It doesn't seem like a crazy thing that he definitely wouldn't have said. I mean, on the basis of the idea that, like, you know, apocalyptic Jewish preacher. But then again, that doesn't mean he did. I don't know. I have my own personal opinion on that, and I will leave the actual discussion of that to the scholars of the Bible, who isn't me. Jake Nelson says, oh yeah, I already said that for $10. Roasting a transmissible parasitic dog Keller for $4.99 says, molecular clock dating of Pediculus humanus is how we know about when our ancestors started wearing clothing about 170,000 years ago. Yes, that's true, right? There's like a clothing louse, if I remember what it is correctly. And it actually diverging from body hair louse and adapting to specifically inhabit clothing is a good indication of when humans started wearing clothing to any significant degree, right? Like, it's possible there was the occasion, like, oh, I put on a headband to catch my sweat, or like I made a belt to carry some stuff on or something. Like, that could have happened a little bit before that. But yeah, that's a good way to indicate exactly when humans really started wearing clothing as a significant and daily part of human life. Which, by the way, is super weird. Humans, you guys are weird about that. Got way too many hang-ups. Just be like a Ceratosaurus, right? Tie, monocle,
We have
top hat,
hang-ups
all you need.
and hangers.
True. So let's see. Savage premarital mitosis Cobra gifted 5 Dark Times memberships. They went to Shazammy Whammy, Pelagic Thought, Arnix 404, Christine V, and W Swordsman, which is how I was told to pronounce that, because apparently I've been saying WS Wordsman, and that's not correct. It's W Swordsman. So let's take 5 drinks. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You know, Jackson, in the almost 2 hours that we've been here, we've gotten through like 4 minutes of Pat Jackson.
Look at us. Look at us.
We're blazing through this.
We are blazing saddles.
Good movie. Good movie.
Here's, not only did they say, well, evolution must have gone backwards, but they also said this next.
No one ever said that. That was you hallucinating that. Once again there, Bad Jackson. You seem to do that kind of... Bad Jackson, have you considered actually seeking out psychiatric care? Because, I gotta be honest, it seems like you're having a lot of hallucinations, and I'm a little concerned. Because that probably means that you're, like, psychotic. You're having breaks with reality. And they don't seem to be, like, destructive psychosis, which is good. But, like, still, you don't want to have just breaks from reality. It's not a great thing, right? You might want to get on, like, some kind of antipsychotics or something. And look, there's no shame in being on an antipsychotic, right? Your brain is like any other organism. Organ. Sometimes it does the wrong thing, and you want to be able to fix that. And taking a medication to help fix that is good. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm not trying to diagnose you, my guy, but, like, you might want to look into talking to, like, a psychologist. Because you really do seem to just be hallucinating things into these texts that just are not there. Bitcourse has been a member for 13 months and at the tetrapod level says, sometimes I want to break from reality. AIG is a bag of dicks, and so we'll take a drink for that. Look, I will admit, there are times when I'm like, you know what? Reality really sucks. And I don't want to spend time in reality. But that doesn't mean I'm confusing non-reality for reality. Which is really what is happening when you have, like, a psychotic break. So, here we go.
Here's a picture comparing the Lucy, this is a male Australopithecus afarensis, the Lucy species, and then a million years later came Australopithecus africanus, at least they say it was a million years, and notice the longer arms, the shorter legs. This is much more chimpy and ape-like.
No, they're both 100% ape-like because they're both apes. It's like saying Australopithecus afarensis is more mammally. What does that mean? They're 100% apes. Neither of them is more or less ape-like. You're 100% ape-like, Charles Jackson. Look at you with your Y5 molars, your enclosed orbits, your hyper-flexible shoulder joints, your enlarged cranium. Come on, man. You're as much an ape as any other ape.
Much, much less human-like, even though a million years of evolutionary progress has occurred.
Evolution doesn't progress towards an end goal. There's neither Australopithecus afarensis nor africanus had some kind of goal of becoming modern humans, right? That's not how evolution works. Evolutionary progress is just a made-up thing. And now, to be fair, it's not something Charles Jackson made up, but it's not a real thing.
But look at one of the other explanations besides, well, maybe evolution went backwards. Here's the other one. Next.
Which is not an explanation that is being proposed. Just putting that out there.
Next. Berger thinks that it's more likely, however, instead of evolution going backwards, that the two species evolved separately.
Yeah, that's a perfectly normal thing that happens. Like, Charles Jackson, you accept common ancestry within various groups of animals, right? Like, you accept that domesticated dogs and African wild dogs and maned wolves and short-eared dogs and crab-eating foxes and tanukis and Indian dholes all share a common canine ancestor. But it's not like every single one of those species gave rise to one other species in a line, right? Like, we didn't start with the pampas fox, and then, oh, there goes the maned wolf, but then the pampas fox gives rise to the red fox, and then the pampas fox then gives rise to the fennec fox, and then later on it gives rise to the coyote, and then later on the jackal, and then later on the wolf, and then later on dog. Like, that's not how anyone is proposing anything, including you. Evolution is a branching tree. And the fact is that two organisms can diverge and evolve separately, and you don't necessarily find them always at the same time in the fossil record, even when the lineages overlap temporally in reality. Because the fossil record is incomplete, especially when it comes to primates. Primates tend to heavily favor wooded areas, and wooded areas tend to have really high decay rates, which is one of the reasons why it's very hard to find fossils of woodland creatures throughout the entire geological column. Wooded environments are vanishingly rare. Now, swampy woodlands are an exception, right? Because in those cases, you can get like highly acidic anoxic conditions in the swamp.
Peat bogs.
Yeah, peat bogs are a great example. But just actual terrestrial, non-wetland forests, they're almost entirely absent from the fossil record. And that's where apes love to live. So yeah, this is not some kind of crazy, oh, they had to change their story because they can't get anything right. This is just a combination of why is science and also just vastly misunderstanding taphonomy, evolution, comparative anatomy, and just how to read.
Yeah.
The most probable idea is that
a big
afferent
one.
Yeah, how just basic literacy skills would go a long way.
and Africanus, that's Lucy and the Africanus, are sister species that share a missing link ancestor.
Yeah, probably. Look, the chances that you found the direct ancestor and the direct descendant is always going to be very small. And we would need extremely fine gradations to make that argument. And we can in a few places in the fossil record. Famously, Triceratops and Thalassocnus are two genera where we have what are almost certainly chronospecies, where we can actually watch them evolve through anagenesis into new species in the fossil record. There's also a whole lot of phytoplankton, right? Like, Jackson, you know all about those, like, foraminifera and whatnot, right?
I do like my foraminifera.
Yeah.
And coccolithophores and radiolarians.
Yes, we cannot forget the
And
coccolithophores.
diatoms.
Yeah, none of those should be forgotten. But yeah, other than those very unusual examples where we have extremely smooth gradients, we are much more likely to recover two species as closely related species that share a common ancestor that we probably haven't found, because that's statistically more likely.
And National Geographic goes on to say, if so, only one could have been ancestral to humans.
Or neither could be.
Yeah.
That's the most likely answer.
Only one of them could actually be our ancestor.
At most one of them.
Then, well, which one?
Probably neither.
You see, they lived. He's saying they must have lived at the same time. We just haven't found the fossils. You see, of them.
Yeah. When you find a fossil, what that usually means is that that animal lived before and after the actual fossil finds that you have, but you don't know exactly by how much. And that's just because it's unlikely that you found an example from the earliest or the latest stages of an organism existing. Now,
unless we're talking like the Chicxulub.
Right, I was about to say exactly that. There are exceptions,
dinosaurs, yeah.
right, where we know there's an absolute extinction event of a wide swath of organisms, and so we can say with very high confidence, okay, these are some of the last T-Rexes to ever live because they're just under that boundary. But short of a sudden mass extinction, we cannot determine whether or not we found something that's early or late in the history of a species. And the most likely option is that it's somewhere in the middle.
Living at the same time, we found the Africanus a million years higher in the rock layers, according to their way of dating rocks next.
Man, you know, everyone's always talking about dating rocks, but I've never actually been on a date with a rock. I wonder how it would go. Like, I can't imagine...
A rock star?
No, just a rock.
Oh.
Like, they don't seem like great conversationalists, so I don't know. On the other hand, I hear they can really hold their liquor. Actually, that might be a problem if I'm the one paying, because that would just mean they're a really expensive date. Huh, maybe I don't want to date a rock. I don't know. I mean, if you're Roger from Mount Foster University, you seem to be attracted to at least some of the rocks out there, especially the caves. Ooh. Those caves, man. Very sexy caves. Savage,
no!
Have you seen any of Mud Fossil U stuff?
Nar.
It's so ridiculous. If you ever want to feel like you're extremely drunk just from all the brain damage, go watch Roger. Savage premarital mitosis cobra for $5 says, gradients as smooth as Charles Jackson's brain based on his rather interesting takes. Yes. Roasting a transmissible parasitic dog killer for $1.99 says, good thing we're currently in a mass extinction. Yeah, we are. Based on the extinction rate that's currently evident in modern species, it's at the level of some of the mass extinctions that have occurred. Not like the end Cretaceous, right? Because that was over the course of like a few months. But like this is over the course of a few thousand years, and yeah, we're at the extinction rates that we see at things like the End-Triassic extinction, stuff like that. Yep.
And here's where Afarensis and Africanus fit in. They are sister species, according to this researcher Berger. Neither of them are our ancestor, as far as I'm concerned, certainly.
I mean, that would be my guess, too. I can't say for certain that neither are ancestral to humans, like modern humans, Homo sapiens, but I doubt that either is. Because we tend to be, we're very unlikely to find direct ancestors. And even if we did, we're unlikely to be able to say for certain that that's what we found.
Lucy's having terrific problems. We were talking about that. And
that's not a problem. That's just standard operating for evolutionary biology. That's just normally how it goes, right? That's not a problem.
And if they're sister species and one's not, then there's a very good chance the other one isn't either. Next.
I'm not even sure what that sentence meant. But that's where we're going to call it here, because we've only got a few minutes left before we are, like, that's where we're stopping. We're 2 hours. We're actually, we're only like a minute away from 2 hours per the actual time live, but that's, because I start early with a countdown. But Jackson.
Me.
Do you have anything you want to tell the fine people here at the Dapper Dinosaur channel about that you maybe have coming up soon?
Yes. I do.
Well, go ahead and do it then.
Okay, all right. So, we are continuing with the Ancestors' Tale series, which we have been doing for like 3 years now. And we're nearing the end. We're in like the final third, I think.
Nice.
Of it. So the next video in that series is going to be The Lancelet's Tale.
Ooh.
We are meeting the last of the chordates.
Yeah, I was about to say you're about to get out of chordata, huh?
Yeah, baby.
Are you going to get into hemichordata?
Yes. The hemichordates and the echinoderms will be covered in the ragworm's tail, which is the next video, which will also...
Lancelet?
Yeah, after the lancelet, basically it skips down to... so I have... And, I mean, like, the point of the ragworm's tail will be this... contention. I kind of disagree with the way that Dawkins and Wong frame the ragworm's tail, and the point of the ragworm's tail is like the explanation as to why, of course. But so we'll cover basically all the Spiralian phyla in the ragworm's tail, and then the next one will be the brine shrimp's tail, in which we'll cover all the Ecdysozoan phyla, because
all of them.
Yeah, so all the Spiralians get covered in the ragworm's tail. And because I was like, well, first of all, do I want to do all protostomes together? And the script was already so long that I thought, maybe not. Since the ragworm is an annelid, I was like, okay, well, we'll just do all Spiralians in one script, and then we'll do the Ecdysozoans in the next one.
Now, you figured out, since last time I asked you about this, that in fact... snails are spiralians and not ecdysozoans, right? Because I know that this has been a point of confusion for you in the past.
Oh, wow. Would you look at the time? We have to go. Look at that. Crazy, dog.
All right. Well, over on this channel, as well as...
I'd forgotten that, Dapper. I had to remember what that was a reference to.
It was, oddly enough, a reference to Hollow Knight. Okay, so tomorrow at the same time as this show, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, over on my other channel, Top Hats Off, I'm going to be doing a one-shot of Star Trek Adventures. There's going to be a number of people you know. Jordan from Reason to Doubt is going to be there. Chesh is going to be there. Maddie from Science Side Up is going to be there. A few other people that you might not know. That's okay, too. It's going to be called Star Trek Prelude. Their ship is going to be the NX-03 Challenger. Just a one shot though. We have our Vulcan captain, we have our Tellarite doctor, most of the rest of the crew are humans. It's going to be a lot of fun, I think. So join us for that. I'm not entirely sure how long it'll go, but I'm hoping it's not going to go more than 3 hours. And so yeah, it's just going to be basically a let's play TTRPG that's going to hopefully feel like an episode of Star Trek, and it will be tying into future campaigns that I'm going to do. This is sort of a prequel to future Star Trek Adventures projects I have in the works. which is going to have a different cast, different crew, different ship. There might be some cast overlap, but still, generally speaking, different crew, different ship. Presumably some, at least, differences in cast. So yeah, check that out if you are interested in Star Trek, or I don't know, you just really like watching me do stuff. Then on, so that is tomorrow, Thursday, I am releasing the final of the 4 episodes of the Creepy Carl series. This is called Clear Glowing Metallic Hydrogen Water. Because according to Carl Baugh, the firmament was a sphere over the surface of the Earth made of clear but glowing metallic hydrogen water that was also a plasma. And yes, multiple of those things are mutually exclusive.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, we get to find out that, in fact, having more light coming from sources besides the stars makes it easier, not more difficult, to see the stars. So according to Carl Baugh, at least, a big, bright, busy city should be the best place for astronomy. It's weird how astronomers consistently avoid those places. But, I mean, they're just not as smart as Carl Baugh. But then, on Saturday, the plan is currently to be back with Vishanti talking about Dino Dave, who is sort of like the Kent Hovind that your mom tells you is the Kent Hovind you already have at home, which is why you can't get the Kent Hovind seminar series. Because you already got Kent Hovind at home, except it's Dino Dave, and it's not the same, and you can tell. And then, let's see, next Tuesday should be Kent with Bent, whatever the number is. I'll try to find out, because I don't know. Kent with Bent, 134 should be next Tuesday, a week from today. That'll also be at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. And we are not doing Power Rangers tonight, so if you were looking forward to that, I'm sorry. But yeah, we're delaying that until at least Saturday. Sorry about that. With that being said, though, thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to double check to make sure I haven't forgotten any more super chats, which looks like I did. Roasting a transmissible parasitic dog color for $4.99. Our ancestor could be a cousin that played Slapknuckle with a Homo erectus. Yes, that is possible. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Remember, if you did play along with the drinking game, don't go out there and drive right now. It's a bad idea. Or don't text your ex and don't operate heavy machinery, cranes, wrecking balls, all that kind of stuff. Goodbye, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your night.
Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Ben Tovind, Felgevara, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, E2V, Strawberry Vein, Denny5252, Aileron Teller, Horseflesh, Ian Chen, Kelvin Brostick Van Manen, Landon Knoll, Mabbity Babbity, Monkey Day Them, Sphincter of Doom, and Volus. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.